Women and girls policy should be central, that women and girls issues were central to every other issue. You can't hope to have more economic prosperity or more stability and peace or better humanitarian outcomes if we are not paying attention to women and girls.
You began your career in the US Department of State in the Office of Global Women's Issues in the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement. So women's issues have just never been just women issues, right? They come up with a lot of baggage, they come up with a lot of different things and they require the world's attention because it's literally 50% of the world's, so it's a fair share of equality. How do you believe that, how far have we come in?
This is a great question. Thank you for having me. I'm so delighted to be here with you having this conversation because it's something that is deeply important to me at my core, not just my professional self in this job, but frankly personally, which is why, to your point, when I was seeking out an internship as a senior in college, I chose to apply to the Office of International Women's Issues because I knew that women's and girls issues were central to every other issue, right? You can't hope to have more economic prosperity or more stability and peace or better humanitarian outcomes if we are not paying attention to women and girls, right? And I found that all over the world, and I'd love to talk about some stories that you and I have both encountered where that's been true. So I think two things can be true. I think that we've made an enormous amount of progress on women and girls' rights, women and girls' livelihoods around the world. It has been really gratifying over the last few decades of my own career to see a recognition that women and girls policy should be central to an international affairs agenda. And you see some of that in how women and girls issues have been prioritized. For example, last year during the G20, when India was chair of the G20, the United States and India worked together to push countries as part of the G20 to advocate for more inclusive women and girls policy. Right. That's great, right? And we need to be breaking down barriers and creating economic incentives as a matter of policy. One thing in my job, we think about women and girls issues as a matter of policy, as I mentioned, right? But these issues aren't just policy issues, they're cultural issues, right? And part of why we have so long to go is because we're still working to break through cultural barriers and traditions and norms, and that's true all over the world. And a lot of my own friends, women and girls who live in different countries around the whole world, are grappling with the same issues. They're grappling with the expectations of their parents. They're grappling with their pathways to education not being adequate. They are dealing with a lack of flexibility in how they might participate in the formal economy. They're dealing with, are there adequate childcare policies and elder care policies? So some of those things are cultural when it comes to expectations, and some of those things are areas in which policy can make a difference. And I work in an environment that's quite inclusive, and for that I'm very grateful. That does not mean that it hasn't been difficult to try to assert my voice. And I've become more confident in what I know, and I've had to overcome imposter syndrome like so many women do. And now what you also have to deal with, I think especially as a young woman, is overcoming what other people think of you, even when you know you can do it.
You can do it,
right? And so that's a different kind of overcoming perceptions versus realities, and that certainly is a part of everyday life. But one of the things that has really struck me in this current job is feeling confident in my own expertise. And this is something I talk to other women about. I think when we're young, there's a pressure or an expectation that we have to know everything and that we have to be right all the time. And in reality, no one's right every time, not even presidents, right? And so letting go of some of our own self-imposed pressure to be right all the time, I think can be really powerful, because when you're sitting at a table with people of different backgrounds and different expertise, you can feel confident in your expertise knowing that you know something different than everyone else, but that doesn't make you lesser than because you don't know it all.
As an advocate for advancing gender equality in the workplace, how can initiatives at both government and corporate levels contribute to preventing Indian women from dropping out of work? And what role do you see public diplomacy playing a role in it?
Oh, thank you for asking. So there is a role for everyone to play in advancing the rights of women and girls. And let's talk about government first. We are really proud that one of our priorities for the U.S. consulate here in Mumbai, and indeed for the whole U.S. government in India, is to help increase women's economic participation. We want to be a partner to Indian women and to the Indian government on creating opportunities and better pathways for women. Some of that is going to be done with policy. Some of that is going to be done with strategy. And so when we talked before about the progress we've made, I'm really proud that the United States government has a national gender strategy.
Oh, yeah.
We just last year released an international strategy on global women's economic security, not just women's rights, but particularly economic security, because to achieve all the other rights, women need to feel like they have a path to their own economic prosperity.
That's true.
And so the role of government, I think, really has a lot to do with, number one, creating policies and strategies, but number two, working with our partners around the world to incentivize those kinds of policies.
That's true.
In terms of corporate roles, I mean, a lot of my friends in the private sector are thinking about how they can design specific mentoring programs and internship programs and pathways to jobs for women in particular. And how do we make the pipeline from education to the formal economy more linear for women? So there's a lot that corporations can do to create opportunities within their own companies that accommodate the specific expertise or degrees or backgrounds that women are coming from, to say nothing of having more accommodating care policies, right? As we talked about before. For women to participate in the formal economy, we know that they need childcare, they need elder care, right? That's true of men too. Let's just say that. It's not just women, but these policies benefit families writ large. So, you know, one of the things that we have a U.S.-India Women's Economic Alliance, and we're quite proud of the work that's being done there, because that is meant to actually convene government, business, philanthropy, and the advocacy community to think about how do you get everyone at the table to create new opportunities. And so that's really central to the work we're doing here in India. And thanks for asking about the role of public diplomacy in particular, because I'm really proud that public diplomacy plays a really powerful role in advancing this agenda. I would say maybe in two ways. The first is just raising awareness, incorporated into our storytelling. We should be talking about it. I'm so glad you and I are talking about it here today. We should name the problem. We should talk about the issues. We should talk about what solutions exist. And so just using the messaging and communications part of public diplomacy and the storytelling part is really powerful, I think, to raise awareness. But secondarily, I go back to the point that a lot of our work is these exchange programs and educational and training opportunities. So
on deeper, bigger levels.
Exactly. And so we have programs where, women can access experts or mentors or speakers. We have exchange programs open to women and men, whether it's our Fulbright scholarship or other things where women can come study in the United States. But we're offering those kinds of programs as well as the storytelling piece through public diplomacy.
Nations across the world have failed to talk about women's health in general and how can they impact. And it's been going on for far too long. While the conversations around women's healthcare have begun and there's more awareness than earlier, why is still there a gap, and how do you think we can bridge it?
It's a really great question. I think, so a couple things. First, I think there's been so much focus on women's economic empowerment that we need to make sure that women's healthcare is keeping up with that conversation on economic empowerment. And sometimes women's healthcare, this is true all over the world, can be culturally taboo, can be sensitive, and those things are important to work through in one's own life, in one's own family, with one's own medical providers. But there are policy solutions to advance women's health, and that's increasingly being done. We're very proud that the White House just announced late last year a brand new initiative to rethink how women's healthcare is thought about, researched, incentivized. We have to be working with the philanthropists to bring them to the table. We have to be working with the medical community to bring them to the table. How do we support development across the world that advances women's health? How do we tackle the medical and pharmaceutical disparities that exist? How do we believe women? I don't know about you and all of your friends and family, but one thing that is a common conversation with my friends is that women are often denied access to healthcare or not believed about what they're experiencing. And there's been an increase in that conversation globally.
As a leader, how do you believe mentorship programs can be tailored to support women worldwide in the various professional sectors? And how do you think this might impact positively in their career trajectories?
This is a great question. Do you have mentors?
Yeah, a couple.
That's good.
Everyone in different fields.
Yeah, so that's actually a good point, because I've been lucky to have some great mentors and also in different fields. And I think that point about diversity and having different lenses into different windows of people's expertise is part of then what makes us better.
Yeah.
So I could not be where I was, where I am now if it wasn't for my mentors. I try to take mentoring seriously for the next generation. In terms of programs and diversifying them, one way to look at this is, how do we scale mentorship through technology, right? Are there ways to use WhatsApp, for example, is something I just found out about an organization doing here in India. In addition to formal programming, they're offering WhatsApp chat communities to give women kind of peer mentorship. So one question is, how do we tailor and scale mentorship programs, using technology, using other communications platforms that might not have been done in the past? I think another is, let's recognize that women are not a monolith. We sometimes talk about women and girls as if they're one big blob, one big monolith. And in reality, we're all different. So mentorship programs should reflect that, right? How can we think about offering some women, for example, an experiential, hands-on experience, if that's how she learns the best? On the other hand, someone might learn best through more academic and reading, and how can we offer that as an option? So I think we should recognize that women learn, train, and grow in different ways, and programs can be tailored accordingly. The last thing I would offer in terms of how to diversify and tailor mentorship programs is, where can we explicitly tie an economic or job opportunity to that mentorship experience? That's maybe one of the most promising areas, I think, and that's where the corporate sector is increasingly stepping up to say, we will offer a mentorship program that comes alongside a job opportunity, which is critical. I would be remiss if I did not mention one of our great public diplomacy programs that the U.S. government has, which is our U.S. Fortune Most Powerful Women mentorship program. And there are women who've come from India and all over the world to the United States. They have a chance to intern at Fortune 500 companies in the United States, learn from some very top women leaders in a very tailored environment, but also have a network with each other. And then they all go back into their own economies, into their own communities, and know that they have a network of women around the world that are there to lift each other up. So we're quite proud of that program.
And thank you so much for doing this with us.
My pleasure. This was a joy.
And give us your innate first-hand experiences and emotions to this interview. Thank you so much. We're glad to have you here at SheThePeople TV.
Thank you for the conversation. I'm so delighted.
Thank you so much.